Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Practical EdTech Live of 2019. Didn't do any of these last year, so guess I'm starting this series all over again. Going live on Facebook and live on YouTube at the same time. And a handful of you sent me some questions that I'm going to answer. And if you have a question while we're going through the ones that were sent in advance, please put it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer that for you. All right, so the first one comes from Marnie, who says, I'm going to be teaching a PD session regarding free technology available to teachers and how it can be applied in the classroom. Any must shares you'd like to mention? This is for grades 3 through 6. So that's kind of a wide open, that's a very wide open question, but I'll do my best, Marnie. You don't tell me if you're a Google school or a Microsoft school, but if you're a Google school, I would say, start with some of the lesser known features of G Suite, things like doing interactive slides or hyperlinking your slides to do kind of choose your own adventure things. And start with something like that. If you're an iPad school, I'm in love with the app Toontastic 3D. So if you have iPads, I absolutely love that app. It's a great storytelling app. You can make your own little animated video. And the great thing about Toontastic 3D is that it doesn't require students to have a login and all their work saves right on the iPad. So those are a couple of the must shares that I would think of. All right. Angela, the second question came from Angela, who asked me about Google's VR Tour Creator. I love the VR Tour Creator. It's a fantastic tool. And Angela writes, last month you had a blog post about Google's VR Tour Creator that said students could share their tours and expeditions. Does that mean you could then view the tour with a VR viewer? I tried, but I'm not seeing it when I go to expeditions on my viewing device. So I should have clarified that it only works on Android. So Google's VR Tour Creator, use it in your web browser, and you can make your own virtual reality tour. Provided you're signed in using the same Google account on your web browser as you are in the Android version of Google Expeditions, you can see your own tours in Google Expeditions and lead people on those tours in Google Expeditions. Again, provided you're using Android. If you're using iOS, that's not an option of it to you yet. It will be sooner or later, according to Google, will be. But as of right now, not an option. Sorry. So hopefully that clears that up for you, Angela. Oh, by the way, I made a video on that yesterday. Did make a video on how to do that yesterday if you are an Android user. All right. Third question came from Chuck. Hey, Chuck. Chuck said, I'm trying to use video notes, and it does not seem to work. I searched your blog to try to discover if it was no longer functioning, but I could not find anything. Do you know anything about it? Can you recommend another tool like it that syncs with Google Drive? So video notes still works. However, there's a trick, and Chuck actually answered his own question before I got to answer to him. He wrote back to me. Video notes will only work with the long YouTube link. Video notes, you can find it at video note or videonot.es is the web address for it. Will only work with the full YouTube address. It won't work with the shrunken or shortened YouTube URL, the one that's u.t such da da da. So you have to use the full one, and then it will work in video notes. So nothing that works nearly as well for that purpose. There's a similar tool, but doesn't sync with Google Drive. ClassHook's pause breaks, which I just wrote about earlier this week. Last week, wrote about on Friday. Pause breaks from ClassHook. That's a good option for putting in some questions or pause breaks, but it's not designed for taking notes per se, the way that video notes is. All right, question number 4. Yafa asked me, can you please help me remember the name of the program that allows you to use a video from YouTube and post questions so students will watch the video and it stops at the question points? It can be multiple choice or paragraph answer questions. And I think the tool that Yafa is looking for is probably Edpuzzle. or Edpuzzle will do that. Tez Blend Space will also do that. Educanon will do that. Of course, Educanon has now changed its name, and I'm blanking on what it's called. But anyway, Edpuzzle is probably the one you were thinking of. That's the one that I recommend all the time for making flipped classroom type of lessons with existing YouTube videos. All right. Tom asked me kind of a not generic question, another broad question. What do you say to people who claim that AR and VR are just solutions looking for problems? And someone else asked me this at a conference last week, asked me a variation of that question at a conference last week. And I'd say, I think in the early days, that may have been the case, and early on, I was a little bit in that camp as well. And then I started to do some research on it. Go into Google Scholar and do a little search on AR in education or VR in education, and filter your search for results that are like 1995 to 2005. So we're going back 15 to 20 years, and 25 years, and you'll find there is quite a bit of information there. This is not something that's like a brand new, just launched onto the scene. There's actually people who've been studying the use of AR and VR in education. And one of the things that I find interesting about this, and I've done this myself, one of the things I find really interesting is that AR and VR, when studied in these capacities, create longer engagement, or students engage longer in the learning experience in AR and VR than if it's just a, thank you, Catherine, Educanon is now play post-it. So AR and VR experiences create longer engagement, longer user engagement. And there's also been some studies in the VR world on spatial awareness and spatial recognition, and students who spend time in VR in a mathematics setting have increased spatial recognition and spatial awareness, and have a better understanding of geometric concepts. So it's kind of an interesting, some interesting studies there. I actually put this up on my blog last week or the week before. Some links to some studies on that. It was in my slides that I shared from the keynote that I gave last week. So so it was last week I put it up. And in the footnotes of those slides, you'll see some of those research reports. All right. And the last question I had in advance came from Crystal. Oh, hey, Mama's Boys Comics. I got your email. I'm checking out your page, checking out your channel. So I'm not ignoring you. I just got your email this morning. I'm going to check out your YouTube channel. So everybody else, check it out too. Mama's Boys Comics. Check it out. Mama's Boys Comics in living color. Pretty cool. So Crystal asked me, in my line of work, we write IEPs driven by a variety of data points. I did that at one point too. Recently, I've been thinking I would love some sort of data capture that would run if-then comparisons and generate specific statements and subsequent conditional questions, all of which can be imported into a boilerplate document. This would solve a problem with inconsistency of data interpretation. I'm not sure if this is an appropriate forum or if such a program exists. I'm hoping you can help me out and point me in the right direction. So, Crystal, I don't have a canned solution for this problem. But it sounds to me like you could do this with Google Forms using go-to section based on answer, so that people will select the proper category, and then that will lead them into another section where they where they answer a different question or enter different data. So you can do it that way. You could probably do this with Excel spreadsheets or Google spreadsheets, where you sort the data with conditional questions and statements. Without looking at the actual questions and conditions that you have, it's really hard to generate one for you. But you could probably do that with an Excel sheet or with a Google spreadsheet. But I think the initial, if you're looking at having teachers input that data, I would use a Google form that has go-to section based on answer, so that they answer a question and then takes them to another part of the form. By the way, Microsoft Forums does the same thing. You can do that in Microsoft Forums as well. So shout out to my Microsoft Forums people. You can do that as well. All right. And Catherine just said Common Sense Media has a new AR VR 101 that is helpful. New report AR VR 101 that's helpful. So thanks, Catherine. We'll check that out. I'm going to pin that up to the top of the chat in Facebook. So cool. All right, I appreciate that. Yeah, Catherine, you helped me out there. I knew that Educannon had changed names, and I couldn't think of the name of it. So thank you for that. And the AR VR report from Common Sense Media is great. And again, I'll link up my slides that I mentioned that have in the footnotes a whole bunch of research that I did regarding AR and VR and how students engage with it and longer engagement experiences. All right. Thanks, everyone. Next time I do this, I'll have a better camera setup. I'm kind of looking at 2 different cameras right now, and I didn't get them quite close enough together. So we'll get it. I'll get it better next time. I promise. All right. Have a great day. If you have any questions, you can always send me an email. Richard@bern.media is my email address. Hey, Eagle Ski 117. Thanks for joining us from Wisconsin. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody.